Hey everyone, welcome to this week in our series, Meeting God Again. Whether meeting someone for the first time or meeting up with them again, meeting with someone is so different than just knowing about them. We want to become the kind of people who are regularly encountering and knowing a personal God that we follow. This week we talk about how trustworthy God is, and we're going to challenge one another to lean in, because the only way to find out if someone is trustworthy is to entrust ourselves to them. Here we go. Listen, we are jumping into our series. We're in week 3 of a series called Meeting God Again. Listen, it's a very, very different thing to introduce a topic than it is to introduce a person. I've been married 23 years right now, and I'm still coming to know my wife. As soon as I think I know her, I'm like, okay, that's not totally true yet, right? We get to discover people all the way along. We get to find out who they are. A friend of mine said it this way. He wants to have a PhD in his friend Drew. Like when he sees a new corner of my life, he gets really curious because we just want to walk deeply, want to see each other clearly, want to support one another well. Coming to know someone takes time. It's a little bit at a time, and it's a bit of an adventure along the way. In fact, a guy named A.W. Tozer said this. I said this the first week. I just want to remind you. He said, what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. And like I said, week 1, too many times we treat God like a topic, like something to understand, like something to master, or we look into God's word and we think, I gotta know this. No. We wanna know Him. And knowing Him is different than knowing a this. Knowing a Him is different than knowing an it. And we wanna set off on that kind of path. He said, listen, what comes into your mind when you think about God is the most important thing about you. He says, because we tend by this secret law of the soul to move toward our mental image of God. It's like this. If you think God is a taskmaster, you're either going to work your tail off or hide from the chores, right? If you think God is just some distant, uncaring person, then you'll probably respond just like, listen, I guess He doesn't care. We'll just do our own thing. If you think there is no God, then you're just going to eat, drink, and be merry. Make the most of today because tomorrow we die, right? What we think about God will absolutely, unintentionally, even unconsciously affect the way that we live our lives. What we're finding as followers of Jesus and the people of Canyon Ridge is we just want to know Him better all the time. Not know about Him, not know of Him, but know God from experience. And so we've been jumping into the book of the Bible called the Psalms. In fact, if you have your Bible, I want you to go to Psalm 33, all right? You're going to find them in numeric order, which is very convenient, 33, okay? Psalm 33 we're going to jump into because we're going to look at yet another aspect of God. Week 1, we talked about His generosity. Last week, we talked about His goodness. This week, we're going to talk about how trustworthy God is. Psalm 33, verses 1 through 5, it says this. It says, let the godly sing for joy to the Lord. It is fitting for the pure to praise Him. Praise the Lord with melodies on the lyre and make music with Him for Him on the 10-stringed harp. Sing a new song of praise to Him. Play skillfully on the harp and sing with joy. Now, all of that is this celebration. This psalm actually would have been sung by the Hebrew people going, there's 2 festivals, they would have thought about this, one in the fall, one at New Year, but they would sing this annually, and it would be part of this huge celebration. And so as they're singing and as they're traveling, they would start to call to mind all the good things God has done. And then they say something that's just a little bit startling. He says this, for the word of the Lord holds true, and we can trust everything He does. He loves whatever is just and good, and the unfailing love of the Lord fills the earth. This song, like I said, at an annual celebration just kind of reflects on what they know of God. And listen, I just want to go back to verse 4. We shouldn't just read that really too quickly because it says, the word of the Lord holds true, and we can trust. What does it say after that? We can trust what? Oh, like really? Hey, if you're sitting next to somebody that you know, just like throw like a friendly elbow. Just like, yeah, I see you. I know you. I'm with you. Okay? And if you did that, here's what I want you to do. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust them? Do you trust them like 1 to 10? Maybe just tell them out loud right now. This could be fun. Go. We have marriage counseling if you need it. Okay? Anybody that just discovered they need it, that's fine. Listen, we read things so quickly and so fast, like, yeah, we can trust God with everything. Yeah, we can trust God with everything. Wait. Would you just think about that for a minute? Like, really? Really? Everything? Let's be honest, people. Let's not just say what we're supposed to say. Let's be authentic. Let's be the kind of people who say what we mean what we say, and live what we say, right? We're gonna trust God with everything? What a startling statement. If we really, what would it look like to actually trust him with everything? And if we're going to do that, then we gotta find out that he's trustworthy. Now, you all, hopefully this week, you're gonna jump into Psalm 33 alongside some great people. We've been jumping into this the last couple of weeks. I'll show you how to do that here in just a little bit. But when you do, later this week, you're gonna come to the end of Psalm 23. And after this kind of song, this thing that they sing, they lay out how good God is, how strong God is, how he's the ruler of everyone. And not only is he a ruler, but he's a loving ruler. And then they're gonna talk about, listen, because of that and because of all you've done, we're gonna trust you even more. And so it comes to verse 20 and it says this: we put our trust, we put our hope, any confident expectation of good, which is what hope is, that we have, we're gonna put that in the Lord. He is our help and our shield, which is not some kind of B team, like hold me up kind of help. This word help means like a warrior that you call to your side when you're not sure it's gonna turn out well. That's this word. Azer is like, I need someone to come and fight alongside me. I'm not gonna make it without this kind of help. This is who God is. Or our shield, he says, the one who protects us, who guards us, who provides refuge. In him our hearts rejoice, for we trust his holy name. Let your unfailing love surround us, Lord, for our hope is in you. What does it say at the end? Trust God with everything. Our confident expectation is in you alone, God. Those are bold words. That's high degree of trust. As I started to look into this idea of trust, I was thinking and reflecting on how it develops. And you all know this, but I'm gonna put some names to things that you already know. Like, what does it take to trust someone? The elbow that you threw just a minute ago and said, I trust you at a 10, right? And you lied. Some of you lied, okay? So some of you just lower your number because they just lied to you. We know what it takes to build trust, and we know what violates trust. We've experienced both of those. But if you take what everyone says about trust, there's at least three major things that show up that are absolutely required for trust. Three questions that we're always asking if we can trust someone as we grow in a relationship over time is, number one, are they competent? Like, can we trust what they say because they have the ability to follow through on what they say? Right? Are they able? If we're gonna trust someone, we need to know that they're able. Like in the example last week, Mitch was talking about a mechanic. They need to have a certain skill set to be able to follow through on what they say they can do with your car. Are they competent? The second is motivation. Are they good? Like, do they have good in mind? Do they want something from me, or do they want something for me and with me? What we're finding with God is he definitely wants way more for us and with us than he wants from us. It's always a partnership. Competence and motivation. But then there's this third question of reliability. Like, will they actually show up? Does anybody have a flaky friend? Listen, I have some flaky friends, and I just know that's gonna be like a coin flip if they show up sometimes. Like, if they promise to be there, they'll be there. They're trustworthy, but there's also just like, they do their thing. They kind of move from place to place. No. If we're really gonna trust people, if we're gonna move in the direction of greater and greater trust, we wanna know they're trustworthy. And if they are, this is what we hope to find, that they're not only able to follow through, but they want good for us, they will follow through, they desire for that, and finally, they're gonna be reliable, they're gonna show up in the end. When you read Psalm 33, and I hope you will, whether you're in a study or not, I hope you'll jump into Psalm 33. You're gonna see this lay out in all the way through. Because right after what we read, what the psalmist does is start to describe how strong God is. He talks about how he created everything. And listen, if you can speak and nothing becomes something, I'm gonna put you in the competent category. You are able at that point. He points at God's ability. You'll see it in verses like 5 through 9, something like that. And then he goes on and he says, listen, not only are you able to do all these things, but you are the ruler of all mankind. He says, some people put their trust in lots of other things, but listen, you are the one who's in charge. Which, if he's mean, that's terrifying. But he goes on, he says, no. His desire for us is good. You have always taken care of your people. Goes through the whole thing. He talks not only about the competence, but God's motivation. His desire is for good for us. And then they place their trust again in him because what they've been doing through this whole song is calling to mind all the times God has shown up faithfully, how grateful we can be for the ways in which he's shown up. And so right in the middle of this, you'll see this whole thing unfold, that God is this kind of trustworthy one. He's not some category. He's not a subject to be mastered. He is one who we can entrust ourselves to. He has earned that. And here's how you can actually find out. Those of us who are like, I trust God, it's not really like, do I trust him or do I not trust him? It'd be really great if it was, but trust is not a light switch. Can we all just agree? It's not all trust or no trust. Trust in relationship grows over time. Little by little, like I trust you with a little bit of me, and you trust. There's this couple I was meeting outside. I had a blast talking with them about hiking, and it just occurred to me. I'm like, I don't think they know I work here. I seem like an interrogator right now. But we just a little bit, hey, I'll offer you a little bit, you offer me a little bit. And this is exchange back and forth. And like, you offer me some information, I'll offer you some information. And then what you do with that will let me know if you're trustworthy. And we'll just kind of back and forth find our way through this. And it was great, right? We know this is actually how trust works. Sometimes we just throw all that out the window with God and we think it's a light switch. Well, I trust God or I don't trust God. No, it's not a light switch. It's a journey, right? And this whole idea of trust him with a little bit, see what he does. This is what we need to find our way through. And I just want to point at the pattern that you're going to see, and you'll just acknowledge, you'll shake your head at it. This is how trust works. It's in the same verse I've already read, verse 4. They said this, for the word of the Lord holds true, and we can trust everything he does. Here's how trust is built. You listen to what they say, and then you watch what they do. Can I get a head nod? That's true. That's how trust is built. And if you say something and you don't do it, trust goes down. That's it, yeah? Say and do. If they match up, trust has the capacity to grow. So here's what I want to say. As we all become people who grow in our trust of God and find out exactly how trustworthy he is, don't change the pattern. Listen to what he says, watch what he does. Listen to what he says, watch what he does. But it all starts with listen. So with a bossy voice, here's what I want you to do. Turn to the person you threw an elbow at earlier, and with a conviction, just say, listen. If you're gonna find out if anybody is trustworthy, first you gotta find out what they said. It all starts with listening. This is the kind of people we wanna be, which is exactly why we always look into God's word. It's why we're always trying to collect one another up and look into God's word together. It's why some of you are doing like the work. How many of you guys have written more words in the last couple weeks than in your life? Because you're normally thumbs and typing, but we've been doing some copying and some writing from Psalms in this study. It looks like this, and we've got some more. If you want one on the way out, we would love for you to have one. A really simple pattern to look into the Psalms. This week is Psalm 33. To do some copying and then to internalize it by putting it in your own words, and then to put it into practice by taking some kind of step. This is the kind of way that we can listen well to God. We don't want to find out about him. We want to speak with him and hear from him. And simple tools like this help us do that. So if you don't have one of these, grab one. If you're a digital person, scan the QR code. We'll send you a link. You can get all the things along the way. But find your way into a place where you are listening regularly to what God says. Now, I'm going to give you step 2, but I'm not going to tell you much about it yet. The first one, what was the first step? What was it? Listen, little boss in it, okay? A little bit of snarky in it, it's fine. The second step is do. Now, you might skip this step at first, and I'll tell you why in a second. The first one is you gotta do something with what you hear. Now, you don't actually have to do this at first, I'll explain it in a minute, but then step 3, you better watch what happens. Listen, do, watch, repeat. Listen, do, watch, repeat. And in this way, like a wheel rolling forward, round and round, you make progress in growing trust with one another. This is what I did years ago when I jumped into my journey with the Psalms. God says you're this. Would you help me see you're this? And I just watch. And over, he would show up in exactly who he said he was. And in that way, you just find yourself looking back and saying, God, you are so trustworthy. And so what starts by entrusting him with small things, listening in small things and responding in small ways, grow into bigger and bigger ways, more like a snowball rolling downhill than a wheel rolling forward. Listen, this is how we can do this. Now, I told you can skip step 2 when you begin, because some of you are like, listen, I've never trusted God with anything. I'm not about to do what he says. I don't know if he's trustworthy. That's fine. Skip step 2 for a little while. You can only get so far skipping step 2, but skip step 2. You can do it this way. with the person you threw an elbow at, like you came along with them because you love them, or you found your way into this place just because you're looking for something better, but you're not really sure about actually orienting your life toward God or doing what he says. Listen, there's space for you. Ask questions all day long. Have doubts all day long. But here's what I would encourage you to do. Listen to your friends and watch how it plays out. Listen to what God is up to in their lives and watch how God changes the way they live. This kind of pattern can help you develop trust. It's like when you introduce someone to someone else. They'll tell you stories of why this person is trustworthy, and that might just get you over the hump to actually respond to that same person as well. So listen, how many of you have stories of God showing up in your life well? Anybody have stories of God showing up in your life well? Okay, listen, if that's you, tell the stories to one another. Even if the person next to you also has stories, exchange the stories. This is why Psalm 33 is what it is. Over and over and over, they would repeat this song. It was like the song that never ends. Have you guys ever heard the song that never ends? Yeah, you Google it, but not around kids because you'll ruin your day, okay? It's supposed to be cyclical. God, you're so good. We're singing about your goodness. And so we trust you with everything because you made everything and you rule everything and you have good in mind for us. And so we're going to trust you. And when you trust you, now I got new things to trust you with. Every year they would sing the same song, but with a whole new set of memories and God's faithfulness. We want to be people always telling the stories of God's faithfulness because it builds our trust in him. And so listen, today, tell some stories. All right? So here's what's going to happen. If you have a story, just turn to someone next to you and say, listen. Just tell the stories today. Now, I just want to take this a layer deeper because it's one thing to stand on a stage and look at the Bible and say, listen, we can trust God with everything. He's trustworthy, and so here's how you trust him. It's very analytical. It's all the kind of things, but that's not even the most important question. The most important question is not, is God trustworthy? The question is, can I trust God? Listen, it's a whole different thing to watch 15 people cliff jump into the Colorado River in front of you than it is to stand at the top and decide if you're going to jump. It's a whole different thing. You can watch the roller coaster all day long, and you can watch people get on and then get off safely, right? But when you're clicking your way up the hill, things are about to get real. And if we're going to talk about real life, we need to talk about when things get real, because my guess is in your life, there's things in your life getting real right now. In fact, call to mind some of the things in your life that feel way more real than you would like them to be. This is where God can be trusted with everything matters the most. Yes, it's still going to happen by listen, do, watch, repeat. Listen, do, watch, repeat. But if it doesn't make its way into the thing that's causing your stomach to turn just a little bit right now, like as you're waiting for the diagnosis, as you're trying to get the appointment, as you watch the bank account dwindle, as you're concerned about the meeting that's coming up this week, as you wonder where the person who used to sit next to you is and what's going on in your relationship, as you think about the family member that's struggling right now and you're not sure what to do with it, this is where it matters. It's one thing to say, yeah, we can trust God with everything, but here's my question. Can you trust God with that thing? And I just want to acknowledge, I can think of two really good reasons why you wouldn't. I just want to give you two really good reasons that we all have to not trust God. Okay, here's number one. Because everyone else has let us down. Lots of people don't trust God because they think of God a lot like people. And I would do a show of hands of how many people have had others break trust, but maybe just internally raise your hand. Don't do it out loud. Don't do it visibly. How do you raise your hand out loud? I don't know. Have you ever been not trustworthy? Have you ever let somebody down? Listen, all of our experience says we can only trust people so much. Our whole life says, I'm afraid to trust all the way because I've been let down. And I just want to say that's 100% real. People will let us down, and we have let people down, yeah? And so our whole experience of relationships says, I can't trust all the way. I want to trust all the way. I wish I had someone to trust all the way, but I can't trust all the way because people have failed us. Can I get a mm-hmm? We've expected things from people and they didn't deliver. I just want you to know that's a universal experience. Even Jesus himself experienced this. John chapter 2 says this, that even when people began to trust him, Jesus didn't trust them. Why? Because he knew all about people. Anybody know all about people? Mm-hmm. No one needed to tell him about human nature because he knew what was in each person's heart. Now, he knew it in a special way. He knew it in a different way than we do, but we got enough experience to know. And this applies to every single person, including Christian people, maybe especially Christian people. But I have good news for you. Even though every single person has or will let you down in some very small, or I'm sad to say, in really tragic, heartbreaking, life-shaping ways, God's not like people. He's not like us. If he were, you shouldn't trust him all the way. And Psalm 33 would be crazy talk. But he's not like us. The story of Jesus is not he's like us. The story of Jesus is we're becoming like him. And so listen, if you are one of those people who have watched Christian people and said, if that's what it's like, I'm out. I just want to say, you're smart. Like, that's right. If you look at a bunch of imperfect people and say, if that's what it's about, I'm out, I like you already. That's just good discernment. Because people who follow Jesus are not perfect. They're just as broken as you are. They have just as many challenges as you are. The difference is we have help that is not of ourselves. And so here's what I would encourage you to do. Not look at a snapshot of one follower of Jesus' life. Instead, watch a season of their life. Listen to what God is doing and watch what he does over time. Because God will not be like us. We will become more like him. You'll see people who grow in trust, who grow in generosity, who grow in faithfulness, who grow in humility, who know how to ask for and receive forgiveness, who know how to show up in generous ways. We become more like him. The story of God is not he's like us. God is not a big man. He's not a big person. He's not like just a little bit better than the best person you've ever met. He is other. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. He does not need our help. He is not lacking anything. He is other. And he cares so much that he would help us forward. I know that the people in your life have not been trustworthy, but I just want to tell you, he's not like them. That's reason number one. I get it. You might not want to trust God all the way because it's really hard to trust people all the way. Here's the second reason you may not want to trust God all the way. And this one's really delicate, like super delicate. You might get mad in a minute, but please stay with me for a second. You may not want to trust God because not only have people failed you, but you feel like God has failed you. Like, it's really hard for you to hear God is trustworthy. And you're like, oh yeah? Let me tell you this. Whatever you thought would shape up or whatever you expected in life. I was just talking with somebody after church last night and just lamenting that how hard life can be and how often we find ourselves in a season that we thought would be one way, and it is not that way at all. The people we thought would be there are not there. The person we thought we would be, we are not. The thing we begged God to do, he didn't. The thing we begged God to take away, he didn't. The thing we came asking for the most and were so convinced was next didn't happen, and it felt all the way soul deep like God quit, like God failed, like God flaked. I don't know if he was able to help. I don't know if he wanted to help. I don't know if he forgot, but he didn't, and God failed. And so Psalm 33:4, trust him, everything he does is trustworthy. Here's the delicate part. I don't. We feel like God has failed. And sometimes it's because we expected something he never promised. Listen, I'm not taking anything away from the grief or sadness of your loss or your experience. That can totally coexist. God is so strong, he's not just able to take away and bring relief and rescue and all those things. He's so strong, he can carry us through even those things without failing. He can be trustworthy even when it doesn't go the way that we want it to. And so many times we speak for God and say, this is how it's gonna go. And God said, I never said it was gonna go that way. I never said I would pull you out of every fire. I never said I would give you that person forever. I never said I would make it feel like this or look like this. I know we all have expectations. That's being human, right? We all have these things. But listen, we don't like to be held to promises we never made, do we? How many times do people show up and put expectations on us and then punish us for when we don't meet them? And we're like, I never said I would do that. I just wonder if sometimes that's what God is doing with us. Listen, it may feel like God has failed, but I just want to encourage you to look back and say, did God ever promise? What was God saying all along the way? This is why listen, do, watch starts with, what was it again? What does it start with? Jesus' friends and followers struggled with this for sure. Struggled soul deep with this. He gathered up this group of people and Jesus was saying, listen, the kingdom has come. I'm gonna make things right. This struggle that your people have had for centuries, you can't even imagine a generation of your family, Peter, James, and John, where your people were not in struggle, where they were not oppressed. And I'm here to bring life, to bring rescue, to do all of the things. And yes, finally, a conquering king who's gonna show up and power up and win over and put all those people in their place. And Jesus is like, nope, not what I said. In fact, they were so determined that their expectations were right. They were blown away when Jesus gave his life, even though he told them 3, 4, 5 different times specifically, this is exactly what he would do. Listen, God's ways are not our ways. And his thoughts are not our thoughts. And so he sits down with his friends on the night that he would be betrayed, and he says, listen, don't let your hearts be troubled, which is another staggering statement, right? Because there's things in your life that trouble you right now. I only need to ask you this simple question, what keeps you up at night? And I bet you have a list of 5 things. And again, the question is not, can God be trusted with everything? The question is, can God be trusted with that thing? And so Jesus looks at his friends in the middle of hardship and he says, don't let your hearts be troubled. He says, what does it say? Trust in God. And trust also in me. Trust me. Just good in mind for you. I'm so capable. I'm not gonna flake on you. Trust in God. I have all the capacity needed, God says, trust me. I have more good in mind for you than you could ever imagine for yourself. Just trust me. Listen, I'm not gonna abandon you. Jesus, over and over through the whole scripture, Jesus himself saying, listen, I will not leave you. I will never forsake you. I will be with you the whole of every moment. There is no one who is trustworthy like God is. And so as you call those things to mind, the question is not, can you trust God with everything? Can you trust God with that thing? Can you trust God with the next thing? What's the thing that's causing you anxiety, causing you fear? It's full of ambiguity. This is the very next opportunity for you to grow in trust and relationship with him. If you'll just offer that to him and say, God, this is the thing right now, and then jump into the 3 steps. What were the 3 steps again? Listen, do, and watch. We entrust ourselves to things. This is what we do, right? We entrust ourselves to things. So that thing that you are trying to manage the anxiety of, here's how you know what you're trusting in right now instead of God. This is heart work I had to do in me. Here's how would you finish this sentence? Listen, I know this is hard, but I'll be okay because what? How do you finish the sentence? I'll be okay because. Well, I know money's tight, but I'll be okay because I have a nest egg. Oh, you know where your trust is. You know what? I know that relationships are hard right now, but I'll be okay because we've gone through this before. Just waiting it out. I know it's really hard at work, but I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out before. I'll be okay because I know how to figure it out. These are the scripts we write all the time. I'll be okay. I'll be okay. It's like when I put my kids on a roller coaster for the first time. You know, like when a teenager straps you in, I'm like, I'm not sure you're qualified, but okay. You sit down with your kid who like stood on his tippy toes to meet the height requirement, right? And they put the thing over and they click it in and they do the thing and they're like, hey, this is so good because it's just sitting still, it's totally flat, everything's good, everything's calm, everybody's fine. And then all of a sudden it starts to move, right? And then what do you start to say? Listen, it's fine, look at this thing, it's not gonna move, you're clicked in, there's no way you're gonna fall out. Listen, I've gone on this before too. I'm right here with you. All the reasons, these are the things we ask them to trust all the way. And they still scream their faces off. Here's how you know you're really growing in trust of God. We know we're trusting God when we finish the sentence like this. And it's the first thing we finish the sentence with. I know I'll be okay. Not it'll be okay. Sometimes it's not okay. But I know I'll be okay because God has provided a nest egg for me. Because God has surrounded me with great people. Because God will never leave my side, because God has never failed, because God is for me, not against me, because God rescued me, he didn't condemn me, because God over and over and over. And so listen, let's be people who grow in trust of God. Here's how we know we can trust in God. Step number 1 was what? Tell somebody. Listen. Whatever it is that you're struggling with right now, here's the question that will reveal whether you're listening. What does God have to say about this? Not what do my friends have to say, not what does my boss have to say, not what does the doctor have to say, not what does the best books on the subject have to say, certainly not what does Wikipedia say. Or WebMD. Terrible idea, always, always. Listen, God, what do you have to say about this? This is why we're always taking in what he has to say. And then here's the most important step, and this is where it gets real. You can't skip this step if you want to have a relationship with God. You cannot skip this step. Step number 2 was what? Do. Here's the question you got to ask, or here's what you got to do. You got to do what someone who believes him would do. You got to act like what you heard is already true. You got to act as if. This is what happens in our relationships. I have to act like you are trustworthy before I can find out if you are, right? There's no way to experience the jump until you leave the cliff. At some point, if you've watched enough in your friends, if you've listened closely enough to God's character, you got to put it into practice. You got to let the rubber meet the road, and you got to choose to live in the tension of not knowing how it's going to turn out. You cannot find out if it's trustworthy until you crest the hill, right? This is what has to happen. You got to find a step that says, God, I've listened the best I know how, and I'm going to do exactly what someone who believed you were right would do. And then finally, you got to watch, and watch close, with the anticipation and the expectation that God is going to show up. Be attentive. We've said this. Relationships only grow with attention and availability. You can only find out if you give God your attention, watching for how God will respond. Psalm 33 will help build your trust. So can you trust God? Here are the steps. Tell somebody the 3 steps. What are they? Listen, do, watch, repeat. Listen, do, watch, repeat. Listen, do, watch, repeat, over and over, and watch your trust grow. So this week, spend some time listening. Dive into the Psalms with some people. Look closely at what God says about himself, and then invite him into a challenge in your life, one that feels just a little bit risky, and entrust yourself to him in a fresh way and watch how he comes through. If we can support you along the way, we would love to. Head over to canyonridge.org where you'll find a way to get in touch with us along with everything else that you might need to know. Listen, if this was helpful to you, I encourage you, share it with a friend, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll see you soon.